It's the Week 9 wide receiver stock report. Who's trending up? Who's trending down? Who's worth an ad? All of that coming up next. Let's start the Week 9 wide receiver stock report with some big names. And we're talking about guys like DeAndre Hopkins, a perennial wide receiver one in fantasy, a guy we've taken in the first or second round in PPR formats for several years now. However, he looks like his stock is finally trending down after being a guy that was peppered with targets every single game last year. He is now a guy that is a high-end wide receiver too, that relies on touchdowns and has yet to have a game so far this season with over 100 yards receiving. Let's repeat that. Through 8 games, through 8 weeks, DeAndre Hopkins has not had 100 yards receiving. That is an issue. DeAndre Hopkins hasn't had any games with 10, 13 targets. DeAndre Hopkins is relying on touchdowns and is now a wide receiver too. I don't even necessarily consider him a must-start guy when you consider the likes of some of the other guys that maybe you have on your roster that you might have hit with in the mid-rounds, like a Jamar Chase, for example, an all-time great at this point in his rookie year. It could be a guy that you could obviously play over a guy like DeAndre Hopkins at this point. He is no longer a must-start wide receiver one. He is a high-end wide receiver two with wide receiver one upside. In order to get back to that wide receiver one status, he's obviously going to need help. He would need injuries from a guy like A.J. Green, Christian Kirk, and, right now, the guy who's dealing with the injury is DeAndre Hopkins, who is dealing with a hamstring injury. So DeAndre Hopkins, unfortunate to say, but the stock is down on this guy. If you could still find somebody who is highly interested in him, still sees him as a wide receiver one, and would be willing to offer you something for him, I would definitely trade off DeAndre Hopkins for something that you would value as a RB1 or a wide receiver one. So unfortunate to say, but the stock down on Nuke. Marquise Brown, Hollywood. Hollywood has gone into, well, let's face it, his stock is up. He's in must-start territory. I didn't think I'd be saying that one. This is a guy that I've had in my keeper league since he was a rookie. Been a little bit frustrating, but that's kind of the thing. We expect so much so early from our fantasy assets. And when you think about the fact that, he had some growing pains dealing with some injuries, he's a little bit of an undersized receiver, and you have a quarterback that himself is still learning how to play a quarterback. Let's face it, Lamar Jackson had teams asking him to play wide receiver through the draft process. Fucking joke, right? But that's the case. Lamar Jackson maturating nicely. Hollywood maturating nicely. And we're talking about a guy that doesn't need 10, 15 targets a game to go the fuck off. This guy needs about 6 targets a game to be Hollywood. He gets those high value targets. He's open every single week, and I do mean every single week, for a long touchdown. The question is, will Lamar Jackson hit him? Will he bring it in? And right now, a majority of the season, he has been making those plays. He's got one game where he didn't make the plays. And then there's about one other game where Lamar Jackson missed him and didn't make the play. Outside of that, this guy's been phenomenal this year. He's a must start. He is better than Tyler Lockett. Let's face it, people have put Tyler Lockett in that must-start territory, but Tyler Lockett is a boom-bust guy. He's a guy that gets you enough points to win you a week, and then he gets you enough points to lose a week. Very rarely is Hollywood ever going to be a guy that's going to have so little points, he's going to lose you a week. more often than not, he's going to help you win a week. He's a guy that you want in your lineup. I'm not afraid of a guy like Rashod Bateman. I'm not afraid of Sammy Watkins. I'm not afraid of Mark Andrews. This team doesn't have the running game that it's had in the past. They are relying more on Lamar Jackson than they ever have in the passing game than they have in the past. In fact, the only part of the running game that this team really has is Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson's like 80% of this offense, and they are finally letting him sling this ball because he finally has a supporting cast that can make plays down the field. That includes Hollywood Brown, who, like I said, only needs 6 targets to be the man. That was a lot going on right there. But I'm pretty passionate about Hollywood because he finally arrived. Do I think he's the number one wide receiver? No, but he's doing great things for Baltimore, great things for Lamar Jackson. This is a team that I have highly invested in my dynasty keeper leagues, and I'm finally starting to pay off with these picks. So really enjoy the fact that the stock is up on Hollywood. Here's a guy that I just mentioned while I was talking about, and that's Tyler Lockett. Stock is down. I know he just came off of like a 12 reception game on 13 targets or something like that against Jacksonville. You think he's playing Jacksonville every week? You know, this is a guy that's the first good game he's had since week 2. So he's had 5 busts and 3 booms. And I think something around 60 to 65% of managers started him. Now, congratulations on the big day, but you've had more bad days than you have good. I'm not saying Tyler Lockett's a drop. I'm not saying Tyler Lockett's a sit. I'm saying Tyler Lockett's stock is down to the point where he is a start on a spot start based on matchup. That's what he is at this point. He's a spot start based on matchup. This guy needs Wilson badly, and I understand he and Geno and Seattle had a nice day against Jacksonville, but this guy needs Russell Wilson. You know, Geno Smith is unstable under center. He's very up and down. Last week was up. It was a good matchup. They don't get a good matchup every single week. And even with Russell Wilson coming back, like I said, this is a guy that has been struggling since week 2. Finally had a good week in week 8. So between week 8 and week 2 was trash. Week 3 through week 7 was trash for you. So he is a spot start. If you continue to use him as a must start, he will lose you more weeks than he will win you. He needs to be used very strategically at this point. And even with Russell Wilson, I think we need to see what happens for the rest of the season. And, Russell Wilson had the pin out. I know people are probably excited. He'll be coming back really quick. It's possible. But it's still also possible he needs that 7 weeks to get back on the field. I just see right now, stock down, Tyler Lockett, spot-based matchup only. Moving on to more ads, right? These are all going to be kind of stock up guys. We will cruise through these. I've talked about a lot of these guys so far on my channel so far this season, but the number one guy with stock going up with out there available in 43% of leagues, only 57% rostered, and this is a rest of season ad in Cadarius Toney. I understand didn't have a great night on Monday night. Well, not a lot of wide receivers were very hot for the Giants on Monday night. And he had another issue with a thumb. Apparently he was stepped on. So this guy's the Giants just having bad issues with injuries, but he did come back. He caught 4 of his 5 targets. This guy's been very efficient with his catch rate, 77% catch rate so far this season. He's got the highest ceiling right now, basically, of any of the highly available players out there. This is a guy that, despite what you saw on Monday night, still has league-winning potential and a solid 12.7 yards per reception. Kadarius Toney, stock's going up. He is a add for the rest of the season. Another guy with the stock on the way up is DeVante Parker, wide receiver for the Miami Dolphins, 55.8% rostered ESPN leagues. He is an add currently. So far this season in 2021, no worse than 7 targets in a game. That's pretty damn good. That's a good floor for opportunity. And when you talk about now, one, he has been injured for a good portion of this season, but the last 2 games that he has played in, 16.5 PPR points, 17.7 PPR points, and you're looking at 20 targets in those 2 games. It's a lot of targets. It's a decent amount of PPR points. That's definitely not something that you're pissed off about if he scores that while you have him in your lineup. And, we're also talking about the 2 games with Tua, 12 receptions, 166 yards. This guy hasn't played a lot of work, hasn't put in a lot of work with Tua yet. So, big opportunity down the stretch with DeVante Parker. Tua Tagovailoa finally can have, Deshaun Watson rumor bullshit behind him. Now that the trade deadline is behind them, he gets to be the quarterback for the rest of the season. Show him he has what it takes to be a quarterback in this league, and that will help DeVante Parker, a guy who has had at least 7 targets every single game that he has played in. Like that, those are good numbers. And, when he plays, he typically finishes a game. He knows his body for the most part, so he has been frustrating from the fact that his entire career he has gotten a little dinged up here and there, but when he's on the field, he has been a difference maker with Tua Tagovailoa under center. Moving on, a guy that is only 39% rostered, 61% available in ESPN leagues. This stock status is an add. He is a 50-50 boom bust flex. 50-50 boom bust flex, and I mean 50-50. And his bust is not like 1 point, 0 points, 2 points. His busts are typically like 6 or 7 points, but that is Christian Kirk. Some people just don't really want this guy on their roster, but he's got 4 games so far this season with 15 or more PPR points. Going back to the 50-50 boom bust. 50% of the time he's booming with 15 points. 50% of the time he's busting below that mark. But sometimes that mark's like 10, 11 points. It's not always below that double-digit mark. And once again, he only has one really, truly bust where it was 1.5 points. I believe that was week 5 off the top of my head. But for the most part, this is a guy that doesn't kill you any week. But when he goes off, he really helps your team. So Christian Kirk, 39% rostered. He's in one of the NFL's best offenses. And this is the funny thing. Go look at his stats. He basically has identical stats to DeAndre Hopkins. A couple less catches, a few less yards, and I mean by like 10, 15 yards less yards than DeAndre Hopkins. The big part where DeAndre Hopkins has separated himself has been in the touchdowns, 7-4. So yeah, Christian Kirk is not far off from where DeAndre Hopkins is. He's in an offense that has the ability to get him there. He's a guy that I think really should be a lot more at it. He should not be available in more than 30% of leagues, in my opinion. He's one of those guys that's still continuing to get shade because he's just not quite sexy enough, but he is a guy that can be utilized. He has not been bad. He is a wide receiver 27 right now. He is a true high-end, in 12-team leagues, he is a high-end wide receiver 3. He's available out there right now, 61% of leagues. A guy that should be well more rostered than he is. Rashod Bateman, 18.9% rostered. So a guy that is 81% available out there. Stock status is ad. He's a speculative ad at this point. A guy that has that is ending up with high value targets in his last game before the bye. 3 receptions, 80 yards. Do the math. That's 11 points in PPR. It's not great, but not something that you're going, oh God, I can't, like that screwed me. You didn't get screwed. And that's what a guy like Rashod Bateman can do. I think he has some real upside, but we haven't really seen it unlocked yet. When we saw Baltimore come out of the bye last year, Lamar Jackson was really good. Hollywood was really good. Hollywood hasn't been bad since that bye in reality. So, I'm hoping for something similar. We get something coming back out of the bye. This team is rejuvenated. They have all their pieces for the most part back when we talk about the skill position, and I don't mind if Watkins, Bateman, and Brown are all out there with Anderson. That's just going to make it harder on defenses to defend these guys. And, obviously, the way Brown is playing, the way Hollywood is playing, defenses have to respect that. They have to respect Watkins and what he can do as a veteran in this league. And Bateman hasn't earned that respect from the defense. So I think if there's a player out there in this passing attack for Baltimore that has the ability to kind of sneak out and really surprise defenses, it's Rashod Bateman. You're looking at Lamar Jackson, improved passer this year. I really think this is a guy who can develop into a starter or a mid to high level flex through the second half of the season, and has a pretty favorable schedule down the stretch. So once again, Rashod Bateman, about 81% available out there, a really good speculative ad. Another guy that just kind of came out of nowhere, but we should have saw coming, and that's Jamal Agnew out of Jacksonville, 1.7% rostered. His stock status is right now PPR flex with upside as an ad. In the last 3 games, you're talking about 10.9 points, 12.8 points, 15.8 PPR points in the last 3 games. You see those numbers creeping up. He's been a target hog out of the slot. He's taken over that Laviska Shenault role after Shenault had to take over the DJ Chark role. And when we talk about the receivers that are really getting a lot of action consistently in this offense are the slot receiver and the tight end. So Dan Arnold, anybody? I'm not going to be doing a video on Dan Arnold, but there's another great ad if you're looking for a tight end in PPR. He got me through last week while I had my number 2 tight end on a bye week. So Anderson did really good, Arnold did really good for me last week while I had my number 1 tight end on a bye. We're talking about a guy in Jamal Agnew who's got 17 catches in 3 games. So that right there is just 17 points in 3 games. You do the math. Yeah, that's not bad. He does have a tough matchup week 9 versus Buffalo, but I still do believe Trevor Lawrence going to really lean on that slot, really going to lean on Dan Arnold. I think they're really going to do a good job of taking away Marvin Jones and Laviska Shenault. And if there is going to be a receiver that sticks out, it probably will be, once again, Jamal Agnew out of the slot. So this is a guy 1.7% rostered for PPR needy teams. He's basically out there for everybody. I would like to thank you for watching. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Every single Sunday, I join 1080 The Fan here in Portland, Oregon with Mike Lynch and Rashod Taylor for the Fantasy Scramble. We take last-minute start-sit questions. We can take your start-sit questions. Just text them in Sunday morning, a half hour before kickoff to 503-250-1080. And you can listen live on the Odyssey link that I will have in the description below. Again, thank you for watching. Make sure that you check my stock report for Week 9 running backs that will be coming out a little bit later.